A big part of today's story of North St. Louis comes with one of our city's most perplexing set of questions. Just who is Paul McKee and what is he trying to accomplish? Is he the man who set the table for the largest investment in the North Side's history? Or is he the man who bought up over 1,000 properties and let most of them rot? Is he the visionary who sees hope for the North Side and has said so with his pocketbook? Or is he a profiteer who has been part of putting families out of their homes? In one way or another, the answer to all of these questions is yes. Despite repeated requests, Paul McKee declined to be interviewed for this report.
It's horrible. They don't want to come and cut it. They wait till it grows up so high that the babies can go and hide and you can't find them.
Jerry Whitaker wasn't aware who the owner of the lot next door is, but in fact, it's Paul McKee. He owns the vacant buildings adjacent to that as well. His quiet ownership and lack of maintenance are a signature, according to his critics. They say it's the way he has tried to clear property and accumulate large tracts of North Side land to develop, a strategy that goes all the way back to the Team 4 plan of the 70s.
Some citizens living in the community kept their property up, but then a property next to it was allowed to deteriorate. That brought down the value of the property it was next to. And then, of course, those people were saying they were being, constantly annoyed about, you better hurry up and move out before your property value deteriorates more than what it is now, because it'll be down to practically nothing. So those kind of tactics were used to force people out.
Some call it blockbusting.
Blockbusting, I think, also in this case is how McKee was able to depress property values, to scare people, because if you're the last person on the block and every other building's being broken into or burned down in the middle of the night,
you've got to sell.
It's scary, it's dangerous, it's not safe.
Michael Allen would know about Paul McKee. He has spent years unraveling the mystery of the man. It's a mystery that dates back to around 2005 when Allen was with the city's landmarks division. He noticed a lot of buildings being bought up by different companies in North City, but they all shared something in common.
It's like 50 properties show up all over a very concentrated area just north of downtown. So I was looked at the mailing address, just curiously punched that in. 6 other companies sharing the same address of a downtown real estate office, buying in that same area. I thought, this is big.
Allen blew the whistle, and soon the name Paul McKee was becoming well known. When it finally became clear McKee was buying up property with shell companies and there was no longer a need for secrecy, he conducted a merger. State records show him consolidating 13 different outfits back in 2009. Who owned them all? Check the signatures. They were all Paul McKee's.
I think the real reason for the clandestine buying was to avoid publicity, not because he was really worried about having to pay people more. He went to the state and got a tax credit and got half the money back. So it was more, I think, the political firestorm, because McKee was a young contractor starting out in the 70s. He would have been very well aware of Team 4 and the political blowback.
Even today, searching for clues about McKee can be challenging. For example, if you Google his company, Northside Regeneration, you'll be given an address on North 11th Street. The address listed and the one appearing in city property records are different, by the way. The building has been empty when we have visited, and Missouri's Secretary of State associates a St. Charles County address with the company, not this one. Those St. Charles connections may be another reason McKee was being so hush-hush.
And I think if the word had spread quickly that a wealthy white developer best known for Winghaven in the suburbs was buying up North St. Louis, his project would have been over before it started. He needed the secrecy, I think, to especially build relationships with Northside politicians.
Third Ward Alderman Brandon Bosley is one of those politicians.
Of course, I have issues with how things conspired. I have issues with the way things still.
It was kind of shady.
Oh, it's very shady.
He would seem a likely McKee nemesis, but that is not the case. Why?
Paul McKee took what everybody else was saying no to and said, I'm going to say yes to it. You can be pissed off at him about it. Of course, and I've told him before, I don't like the fact, you don't keep your properties up. I don't like the fact you don't cut the grass regularly. Like, I have my qualms with the way he conducts business, but am I mad about the fact that he saw the diamond in the rough before everybody else? He did.
Once he was outed, McKee began talking about that vision for the North Side that made Bosley and some others take notice. Artist renderings of things shiny and new raised eyebrows and even caused excitement. The trouble is, for the most part, these things never got past the drawing board. Bob Lewis, that former Team 4 consultant you heard from earlier, has also worked as a consultant for Paul McKee.
The Paul McKee case is a classic as a start of somebody who really wanted to do good and reinvest in St. Louis, or so it seemed. I think Paul, however, got caught in a situation where he really wasn't that good at it.
Not good at it because you don't need to just buy up properties to get a big project underway. You need community buy-in. You don't tend to get it when the properties you own look like this, or this, or this. And that's before you even get into the perceived efforts to hide what you've been doing.
Unfortunately, that doesn't play well in community development because it looks like you're being shady or it looks like you're hiding something. His actions at the state legislature with some of the tax incentives that he got passed looked like they were only for him. Which is, then it starts to look a little politically shady.
But those upkeep issues proved to be the biggest downfall. McKee is accused of being a slumlord, largely because of the fact so many of his properties are in such complete disrepair.
When he was very, very active, his tactics definitely included, I think, intentional neglect. There's nothing, he never said that was his goal, but the conditions of not cutting grass, of letting buildings get stripped, there's one night when 8 buildings were burned all at once, most of them owned by his companies. And then the wreckage piles were still there. Actually, 1 or 2 of them still are there. It's like the foundation's full of the rubble of the buildings. And that was in 2008.
Yes, this overgrown area was 2621 Sullivan back in 2008. If you look back inside the weeds, you can see what is left of that house that burned more than a decade ago and was never cleaned up. So for more than a decade, McKee has been gathering up property. This gas station pictured on the front of his website is the most visible completed project. But what is underway is the place where some are giving him credit. NGA West, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, is being built in part on McKee land. The $1.7 billion government campus may be the largest project in the city's history. All of the city. And some give McKee the credit for getting it rolling.
Hell, the mayor's office acted like they didn't know anything about it. This man is going around assembling all of this land and you're going to act like it's not happening. They never expected anything like the NGA to come. They never expected him to actually have an ability to do something with it. A lot of people don't know, but Paul McKee is the one who petitioned and actually started the process on the NGA. It wasn't the city of St. Louis. Had it been left up to the city of St. Louis, we wouldn't have that project right now. The project would not be here.
Of course, not everyone sees that as a bad thing.
We live 2314. That empty space right there would be where our home used to be.
Gustavo Rendon and his wife were among the families displaced by the NGA project. According to the city, most sold and went willingly, but Gustavo, who every Sunday night at sunset comes to the site to protest, did not want to leave. He points to this letter he received from the office of then-Mayor Francis Slay, saying, among other things, that Slay would not support eminent domain for owner-occupied properties. In the end, 4 such homes were taken.
For a while, I remember trying to avoid coming across cash because, it was, kind of sad to remember that the house, our home, used to be there. Basically, anybody that can say, I can do better than what that person is doing, I can improve the public image by taking over that person's property, and the city would just do it for them,
What happens to the remainder of McKee's properties, and there are hundreds of them, remains to be seen. Some still hold out that his vision for a regenerated North Side can be moved forward, but few believe it's likely he will be the one to lead any such renaissance.
If he could afford to have built something of scale, it probably would have been occupied. My challenge to Paul is he just never really took that risk, or didn't feel like he was in a position to be able to build something of scale.
I think the best hope is to figure out ways in which other projects need his properties and to facilitate sales. I mean, I think all along he was banking on the value of that land.
And Paul, I think, had the right idea. It just, for whatever reasons, and I really don't know the real reasons, it couldn't pull it off and hasn't pulled it off. And yet the opportunity, I think, is still there.
But future opportunity means little when the here and now is an eyesore.
Why they waiting to take them buildings down? They there for anybody can snatch the little babies around here? Then it shows some concern then. They need to do something about that. All the lots over there, come on now.
She wants demolition because that seems to be the latest answer being touted around North St. Louis. But is that the best thing for the future? We'll address that in our final report. George Sells, MetroSTL.com.